Three, two, one, 3, 2, 1. Should we begin? I think we should begin. Hi, good afternoon from sunny and very cool Texas. Merry Christmas. You know, today we're going to have a Christmas special. You know, like when I was a little boy in the 60s and they used to have these Christmas specials. Well, not quite like that. You know, it won't be quite like that because my singing voice it's not what you would call it's adequate. It's just adequate. Yeah. So anyway, it's still going to be a Christmas special because it's always good to have another Christmas. Today's story will involve going to the home city and the home country and the home church of the original man himself. When we speak about the original, not the original man himself as we speak about Christmas, but somebody that we hold in high esteem at Christmas, and that would be Nicholas, known as Saint Nicholas, who is from Turkey, by the way. So I got to visit there. So we'll just leave that for a moment. Just want to say, I hope your Christmas days will be well and good. Memories from me of Christmas, my memories are fun, snowy, presents under the tree, and very pleasant. And I just am grateful for that. I know not everyone's memories are the same. And some people that I know have harder memories at Christmas time. For some reason, they feel maybe lonelier than at other times of the year. So, you know, I'm sensitive to that. I think most people are. To add to that would be to say, even though one feels lonely, does not mean that that one was ever all alone in the larger sense of who cares for me and who cares for you. It's just understanding that that's there and tapping into that, if you catch my drift. So, let's begin officially. Harumph, harumph. My ear is better, so well, it'd be this ear. I'm looking at that. This ear is better from last week. I can hear much better now. Thank you for asking. Okay. This guy named Saint Nicholas, what we call Nicholas. Let's just have a moment and think about that. First of all, Santa Claus is simply a mispronunciation of Sinterklaas, which is a Dutch word. The Dutch word for Sinterklaas is Saint Nicholas. So you probably knew that. Just a little language thing right there that you may find interesting. Let's do a kind of a cool little interesting introduction to Nicholas. 1700 years ago, probably a little bit more, like 1715 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that, 20 years ago. Back in the late 200s AD, a boy was born to some parents in Patara, Turkey, which is ancient Lycia, which is on the western southern coast in Turkey. And this boy named Nicholas was born into a wealthy family. His mom and dad in this city of Patara were wealthy, and I assumed that he understood wealth as a boy. Or maybe he didn't understand it, but he certainly enjoyed it. Well, along came a plague, and as a very young boy, both his parents died from this plague that moved through the region. Talk about plagues. Talk about things that happen commonly in the old worlds, in the ancient worlds. People lived with that. So, what did he do? He went to live with his uncle, who was a priest, who was a monk. He was a monk in a monastery. And so that was his real introduction to Christianity, to Jesus, to this new faith. Remember, we're talking about 290s AD, that long ago, over 1700 years ago. Right? Something like that. So, he loved the story of Jesus and was very drawn to that whole the faith. Let's just put it that he was drawn, and he had a real faith that came at a very early age, spending time with his uncle. Let's just say that. And so this boy, who's now an orphan, yet he was still wealthy. He still had some money. He became more and more involved in the Christian faith as a very young man. So, with that in mind, I relate to him, and some of you will too if you're like me, because this boy had a real propensity to see other children, I think, from his own experience. So he was ready to help others who were in situations, especially children, who may need some help. So, and that was also very much reinforced with his faith about helping others, obviously. And so he was very big on, as a young man, on helping children. Some famous stories, real briefly. You know the story of my favorite story. Yeah, it's my favorite story, and this is probably one of the most well-known. You know, legends, facts become legends over time. So let's just say that there's a truth in this story about him. So, the truth is probably expanded over centuries as he became a well-known saint. Religion turned him into a saint. And so, with that regard, this human man, this Nick, who were just as human as you and me, he had an ancient opportunity to do some things. And so, and he seemed to be a person that really paid attention to what's going on around him. That's a key. So he helped different families here. He helped a man that and his wife that were very impoverished, and he was able to do it through being sneaky. I call him Sneaky Nick. You know, sneaky people sometimes go through chimneys, but you'll see in a minute that actually where that story might have had its origin. The story is of three young women, three young girls, you know, who unfortunately, because of apparently dad that in order to marry in the ancient world, you, as a girl, you needed to have a dowry, which was a lump sum of money that was, of course, all marriages are arranged, and that's just the way it is, and that's okay. So you need to have a lump sum of money, arranged marriage, and as you give the daughter to that man, that family, that man, you give the daughter and the money. It's called a dowry. And then she becomes connected to that family. That's just the way it is. Well, Daddy had apparently, I don't know, gambled, I don't know, spent the money. He spent any kind of money that was supposed to be there for his three girls. So they were impoverished. So therefore, the girls weren't able to marry into another family so easily. They can certainly become servants, slaves, servants, sold into servanthood, or become servants of another household. So that was pretty bad. So apparently these people were connected maybe to the faith. I don't know, probably. And Nicholas, as a young man, noticed this. He still had his money, some of it. And so what he did is, that oldest girl, he put money into a sock and he snuck it into her window at night, dropped it into the house, into the window, apparently with the idea that there was, I don't know if there's a note or whatever, that she should use this for a dowry. And lo and behold, soon she was announced and given away in marriage with a dowry. She became the wife, very happy. He did the same with this second girl as her time came in the story, in the legend, that has some truth somewhere. So money in a sock. She married. The third girl in the story is that he went with the same idea, is to give money with instructions or with a note that this was her dowry. But apparently the window was all locked up, or the house was shut down, maybe the weather, or maybe there was a long, I have no idea the reason. So he snuck up onto the roof, sneaky Nicholas, and he wrapped it and he dropped the sock with the coins, with the gold coins for the dowry, down the chimney. And it was found the next day in her shoes, apparently. You know, coin in a shoe. So, and then everybody was very happy, and she was later married. This idea is that there's lots of stories of Nicholas, I think, giving away his wealth that he had left as a young man, as a priest, as he studied to become a priest, or a monk. And that is what he did. He was very sensitive to people in dire circumstances or in hard circumstances, to give them help as he could. And initially it had to do with divesting himself from the wealth that he had acquired as an orphan. It's kind of cool, kind of interesting. Sneaky Nick. So from that, you can kind of get the idea, maybe, make the association where different legends came from. Ideas about Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, and dropping off gifts to the needy, to the youngsters especially. The coins down the chimney. So anyway, it's just kind of a fascinating, very old story that's attributed to him. That's taken on legend status. So what do you think of that? You may have heard that before. If you haven't, it's kind of cool, isn't it? And if you have, it's still cool. It's still kind of a neat story. All right. A little thing before we get, this is not, I'm going to try to make this shorter than normal. I try to keep it around 30 minutes, just because. This kind of a Christmas story, and my Christmas wish to you in just a moment is where I want to take it, and then we'll leave it until later. Next week's Christmas. Well, I'm thinking of it. The picture that I'm planning to put up on the wall behind me is when I took a ride early one morning. I was staying down in the area of St. Nicholas. But I went to his original home or original city in Patara, ancient Patara, where he was born. And so I got off the Dolmuş, the van that I was riding in with the other Turks, and I took a long walk down the dirt road to the ancient city of Patara. And right when I was arriving to the very, very far outskirts, it was very green, and there was an ancient archway and all that. So I just went up on the hill and I just sat down because I was tired from walking, and had some little bread and cheese with me. And I was having some bread and cheese, and a sheep walked up in front of me. Was kind of eating, kind of looking at me, like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just here." And so that's how the conversation went. And kept on eating, wasn't threatened by me, so I took a picture. So I'm planning to put up the picture of Nicholas's, where he was born, where he lived until his parents died from the plague, and then he went to live with his uncle 100 miles away. Okay? All right? Does that work for you? Can you imagine that afternoon that I was there, that day? This is just the beginning of where you walk into the city. I was the only one there. I was the only one there all day long. That happened a lot in my travels. When Nicholas was in his 20s, there was an evil ruler, Roman ruler. His name was Diocletian. He came into power about 300 AD, 303 actually. And he started a major persecution against believers, against Christian people, against people who were following the faith in this person named Jesus Christ. They called Jesus Christ. So there was, again, a large persecution. He was arrested and put in jail, and was there for a little bit of time, and then eventually released. So he understood that whole, people were killed. I mean, Diocletian was a bad guy. He was a bad, one of the last of the Roman emperors that fully participated in Christian persecution. Okay. So he ended around 315, 314 AD, and a new ruler came, and things changed. The new ruler was none other than Constantine. So that's when he came into power. Nicholas was a young man in his 20s. So there's just something about that that's kind of interesting. And of course, Constantine became friendly and inclusive to the new faith, to the Christian faith. In fact, he embraced it himself. Very political, becoming more and more religion-oriented, and more. I'm planning to get into this later, but more and more hierarchical, and not so much. Here we are. It's horizontal how we see each other. So religion became mixed with politics, became more and more inclusive when Constantine and the Byzantine Empire started its rule. So, okay. Thanks for your patience. I'd love to get into some of this stuff, and maybe we can historically do some things that would be a lot of interesting fun and then very informative. Here's my Christian message to you. Christmas message to you. Anytime I say Christian, you may associate it with religion. I don't anymore. I haven't for almost 3 decades. Okay? So when you hear it from me, please understand it how I'm using it, how I intend it. Kind of like to shake your head a little bit, maybe, maybe not. If you are probably reared or raised in religious environment, you'll have to shake your head to understand it better what I mean. If you're not a believer or haven't been reared that way, then maybe you can understand it without a lot of prejudice that you might hear toward those who long to understand the metaphysical things, the greater realities that we have before us of faith in God, the Creator. All right. There was a pin drop in heaven. Quote, rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant and being in human form. Another translation says, he emptied himself and becoming a person. A pin drop in heaven. I wonder, don't you, on this pin drop in heaven, that there was a moment in time, and let's use it accommodatively in eternal things, but there was a moment in time when the one known that we know as Jesus, in the Godhead, in the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, there's love. So you have to have, when there's love, you have to have someone to love. God is love. You can't have God by himself without anybody to love. That's why God is love, because there is the oneness of God is multiple in its origin. Elohim is plural, and God created the heavens and the earth. Elohim is plural, meaning the triune nature of God. He's one, but there's a triune nature. So the one we call that was named Jesus, the promised one, he emptied himself. Was there a moment in time when he was there, that entity, that being, that divine being, that Jesus, as we know, that person was there and then suddenly not there? And that was when you could hear a pin drop in heaven. In that moment, he placed himself as a fetus in this young girl named Mary. And he became the beginning, the very conception, the very inception of a person, of a man, of a human being. And you understand that. Wherever you believe about that, you understand the concept because you've heard it probably your life. Christmas, celebrating what Christmas. And my question that I was thinking about, I have questions, good questions that help us think. Do you think it is possible for the Creator to put himself in a position to feel loss? For was not this being there and then not there when he came into Mary, entered her womb? Question. when the Maker placed himself as a fetus in Mary, did heaven, God, experience an emptiness? Was that the first time that God could experience something other by the experience of Jesus taking on flesh, taking on humanity, becoming a person, to join the human race? I don't generally like to do a lot of use a lot of theological words. I do that on purpose. I like to just to talk. But there's an interesting thing here that I'd like to throw out at you. Do you know what the hypostatic union is? Please stay with this. This is good information anyway. It's good learning information. It's a wonderful word. What is the hypostatic union? That is defined as the divine nature, a divine being, and a human being, the divine nature, human nature, put together into one being, into one person. The hypostatic union is the divine nature, the human nature, put into one being, and that being we know as, historically, as Jesus, human, Christ, the divine, Jesus Christ. There's some theology for you. No, we'll stop that. Okay. What is Christmas if not the joyous celebration of this union, of this hypostatic union? I was thinking about this, and I've thought about this for many years, and I know other people have too. This is not like, I'm just saying that I was thinking about this. And maybe you have too. So here goes. Imagine the actual birth of Jesus. Mary outside, or maybe in a covering. Joseph is there, her betrothed. And he's like, my wife's pregnant, but I sure didn't make her pregnant. So he understood what was going on in a lot of ways. He's like, wow, very great, good guy. Stayed, it's like, he must have got a sign. So Mary births this son. So you got blood, got water and blood, you got childbirth. And so, new life. The baby cries, taking in that breath. Okay. Humanity, joining humanity. And joining humanity, blood and water. Blood. As he joins humanity. And joining the human race in identifying in this incredible way with the human race to express oneness and love to the human race. The Creator, the Maker, becomes a person. As a person, feeling like a person, stomach aches, like everything we do. Feeling all kinds of feelings. And yet, he was the only one that could remain without giving himself into selfishness and letting him just go with, I want to do that because I want to. Yet feeling everything, being tempted as we are tempted, and yet doing it all for a reason. Just like the promises that were given all throughout history and prophecy and throughout history that can be verified about this coming one. So, There he is. Boom. Here. Right out there, a baby. And then as a man. Why? Joins the human family. Why? The birth of Jesus. Incredible. Incredible. God, man. The God man. Yeah. It's not fantasy. It's not like you get on HBO or Disney or any other thing or reading any other book. It's real. It is that which is the ultimate reality. Magnificent. Because it's done for good and not bad. Jesus binds himself to humanity, that which is mortal, given over to death. "33 years later, blood occurs again. Blood and water, the spear in Jesus on the cross. And what came out of his heart? Blood mingled with water as it's pierced membrane. And there you have death. Yeah, he experienced the ultimate human experience of death. As promised, God experienced our greatest fear. Death. When it's gone, when we're dead. He says, but you don't understand. Your spirit, your soul. And he goes on and to say, here's what's going to happen. And he proves it by rebirth, by resurrection. The resurrection. He was raised from the dead. Proving his words, giving veracity to his words. So, rebirth. So you had, go back as I close. Think about it. Christmas, Jesus born. Blood and water. Mary birthed the child. Joining the human race. Joining mortality. Joining that which will die. Jesus on the cross. Spear, blood and water again. Signifying what's going to happen is a new birth, a resurrection. A resurrection. Signifying the joining of the eternal family. The eternal family. Two families. God joins the human race in order that he may invite us, take us, bring us, embrace us. With the purpose of all that. As incredible as it may sound to you, God, the Creator, wanted to have children, wanted to have family, the children of God. That's incredible. It's just incredible. It's incredible. So what say you? Fear not. Fear not. God has experienced the worst of humanity and gives us promises. As the God-man, born of Mary, of the Virgin, and saying, hey, there will be a second rebirth. There will be a resurrection. Blood and water in the first and blood and water in the second. Living and dying and rebirthing. So what's the soul treasure? The man Jesus, the divine being of God, the man Jesus traveled a long way. He was on the road a long way, although he could, I'm sure, do it pretty quickly. He traveled a long way in order that we too could go from the human family, from the human experience, into being children of God. Don't be afraid to believe. Don't be afraid. Because it's all good. It's all good because it's all good. It truly is. Test it. Test it. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. May the peace and grace of God rest upon you in trying times, as always. Love you. Adios.